One thing we've heard a lot about is investment retirement accounts. We had a lot of people ask us, what's the difference? So, you'll have people say, well, I have a retirement account, and then they'll say, I have a 401k. You may have heard of profit sharing. Some will say, I have an IRA. Some will say, I have a Roth IRA. Some will have a simple IRA. And individuals get sort of lost. They don't understand exactly what these different accounts are. In fact, I have individuals that call us a lot of times and say, well, I've got 6 individual IRAs. And my next question would be, why do you have 6 individual IRAs? Because they think they have to open up an IRA every year to get the tax benefits. So we're going to dive into that in this podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about difference of these accounts, how they're structured, and then answer some questions from our audience like we do. We always look forward to hearing from our audience. So let's go into an IRA. An IRA simply means individual retirement account. That's it. It's an acronym. It's nothing fancy. It's basically an account that's designed to help individuals that did not have access to things like 401ks, created by the government in an effort to create some kind of retirement savings so that you, regardless of where you worked or what you did, would have a place that you could put some money. Now, those 2 IRAs have 2 different type of terminologies. One is post-tax and pre-tax. So you'll hear a term Roth IRA and you'll hear a term traditional IRA. Again, all that is how is that money viewed? Where did that money come from? The logic with the Roth is, well, I put money in, I don't get the tax deduction, but the thought process is later in life, I'll get all my money back with its gross, it'll be tax-free. That's the premise of a Roth IRA. With the traditional IRA, you're talking about an account that allows you to reduce your tax footprint. So that money going into that account is tax deductible. Now, it's critical when you're looking at these plans, and we always mention this, you have to look at the whole picture. That's why watching your 6 is such a critical component. What do I mean? Well, let's say you get into an IRA and you say, you know what, I put my money in a Roth IRA, it sounds great. Well, you may be missing out at the end of every year on a tax deduction, which means that your income tax, the amount of money you pay Uncle Sam, could be higher, and you could have reduced it. So you have to know the playing field, and you have to know those individual accounts. Now, when we get into things like a 401k, a simple IRA, a solo 401k, those are just bigger and more elaborate IRAs with larger contribution limits. That's all it is. And those are designed for individual groups that may have employees, or they could be designed for individuals that are self-employed. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have your own business and you're self-employed, you may want to look into some of these plans because the tax benefits are incredible. But those plans are designed with one thing in mind: tax-deferred growth for retirement. And why do I highlight that? Well, unfortunately, people do a really bad job of saving money in the regular world, but for whatever reason, they're able to put money in their 401k because it comes out of their pocket every month paycheck, or they put money in an IRA, it comes out of their pocket every paycheck. And then what happens, they run into a snafu, and now they go, well, I've got this huge account, I'm going to dip into it. Well, there are huge tax penalties that go along with that because, again, it is a retirement account. So the government created guidelines that really prevented us from touching it until we were in the retirement age, which by their definition is about 59 and a half. So when you look at your retirement accounts and you've got multiple retirement accounts, the first thing you're having to determine is, what is the benefit to me? Am I looking to reduce my taxes? Am I looking at tax sheltered growth? Am I looking for tax-free income? And those are consequences or considerations that you really want to look at because that will determine which route you go. What do I mean by that is, let's take a 20-year-old individual who has very little income, their revenue is fairly low, they're just starting out, just got out of school. Well, their tax footprint's pretty low. They're not necessarily looking for a lot of deductions. So a Roth IRA, which means the money goes in after it's taxed and that money is tax sheltered, would be a great resource. But again, that's something that would fit them based on their time horizon, their tax issues. When it comes to an individual that's a high net worth individual or an executive or a CEO or a large or successful entrepreneur, they're going to want to look at more robust tax deductible plans. And there are some incredible resources out there. So we always recommend that you sit down with your financial team, make sure you share all that information of how you're structured, what you're doing, your income, your cash flow, and then let them hopefully guide you in the right direction. So as always, we love our viewers, and we're going to go to the phones. We've got a couple of calls that came in today. So let's go to Kim. She's on the line right now. Hey, Kim. What's your
Hi. I just wanted to ask, so what should I do if I am starting a new business? Any tips there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love entrepreneurs because they're exciting. They're looking at opportunity, and typically they have some incredible suggestions or resources or products. The challenge, though, when you start a new business is understanding the fundamental cost. So there is a thing called a pro forma, which I would strongly recommend that you look into. And all it is an assessment of your business, what you're trying to start, and what the cost associated with that is. I think it's critical because it's no different than going to the grocery store and you've got this huge list of groceries, but you only have a certain amount of money. You're not going to buy more groceries than you can afford. So when you're starting a business, you want to make sure you determine what is the cost associated with it. And another thing to think about is what's the cost if I have a rough month, if I have a rough 2 months, how long can I go without revenue? Typically, new businesses have almost a 7-year cycle before they really start to take off. So that's the place I would start with, and then putting your team together. That makes sense, Kim?
Yeah, it did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling Watcher 6. Again, that's a great thing we run into a lot with business individuals or executives, particularly entrepreneurs. I find sometimes they're very passionate about what they're good at, but unfortunately don't know how to run a business. They've never really dived into that. So they learn on the fly. And that can be beneficial, but can also be an incredible hindrance and a individual situation that could become a wall for a new business trying to grow. So you got to be careful there. Let's go back to our phones, and we've got, looks like Daniela on the phone. Daniela, what's your question?
Hi, I was just wondering, when should I start investing?
That's a great question. So I tell individuals, as soon as you're making a little bit of money, start investing. I mean, I wish I would have started investing when I was a teenager. Unfortunately, I didn't. Every 20 bucks went to the mall or went to shopping. But as soon as you start to make a little bit of revenue, and when I say a little bit of revenue, I'm even talking about allowances from your parents. Those would be great resources. Start creating a small, maybe savings account. Build that savings account up to a little bit where you've got a couple of $1,000s that you can start investing in the market. Because if you start at that age and you're young, you'll realize that your liabilities are not that great. So you're not necessarily worrying so much about your liabilities, and you don't have to worry about debt. So you're able to put away a little cash. So I would start, again, as young as you can possibly, tolerate. And again, try to put away a reasonable amount of money. So if you're making, $100 a week and your bills are $50 a week, that leaves you $50 more. I'd try to earmark that for retirement. And that's a great place to start. Did that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for calling Watcher 6. So again, that's a great question we run into all the time. Remember, folks, there's no magical mystery tour here. A lot of individuals get drawn into these schemes or these scams because they're promised, hey, you can invest in a short window, make lots of money. The only people making money on those are the people that created the scam. If you start investing soon, and even if you start with a small number and you're patient and you apply some of the things you're going to learn on our podcast, you'll see incredible amount of growth in a very shorter window. And that individual growth will motivate you to do more. But the key component, and if you ever talk to your family or friends or your parents and maybe your grandparents, they'll all tell you, man, I wish I had invested 10 years ago. I wish I invested 20 years ago. So that's one key thing. To illustrate, had you invested after the last market correction, the big one we had in '08, your investment was in, let's say, the S&P or Dow, your investment would be up almost 400%. That's only going back to 2008. So again, don't wait. Don't sit on the sidelines. Don't do paralysis by analysis. You want to get in. If you're not in, you're not going to make anything at all. So we appreciate all the insight and all the great calls we've had. We thank you for dialing in again for the podcast. We hope that you look forward to some of our future shows. We're going to be talking a little bit more about some of the objectives and other things that we're really going to try to key on. Next podcast, we're going to get into some of the retirement tricks and the investment resources that can make you more successful when it comes to your investing. So as always, I'm Jason with Edwards Financial, and thank you for calling and dialing in. Oh, we've got one more caller. It looks like we have Nancy. Okay, let's go back to the phones. Nancy, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. So I recently inherited a fairly large estate. What are the areas I should focus on?
So estate inheritance is always a challenge. We call it trust fund babies or trust fund inheritance. One of the key components is setting up your team. You want to make sure that you have the team in place that helps you with that scenario. So tax counsel, financial planning and advisory team, lawyers that can review some of the documentation. Because when you're inheriting an estate, you're also inheriting a lot of individual assets. You might be inheriting tax liability. You might be inheriting tax liens. You want to make sure that you mitigate some of the scenarios that can impact your taxes. And you want to make sure that the asset grows. I mean, inheritance of an asset, those are phenomenal resources there. And there are all kinds of little tricks of the trade. So, for example, some of the assets will be trued up to a cost basis, meaning you didn't necessarily have to pay for all the gains. These are all fancy terms that your financial team should be able to sit down and explain. But before you start taking money from an inheritance, you want to make sure you have your team watching your six, looking at all the angles so that they can inform you efficiently to make the right choices. Any other questions?
No, that was great. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in. Anyway, we thank you for dialing in, and we appreciate your support and look forward to your next podcast. I'm Jason, and watch your six.